My family gave me a trophy that said world's #1 disappointment. I left them with nothing. On my 45th birthday, my wife and kids made a big deal about having a special dinner. They insisted I sit at the head of the table. They brought out a cake with candles. They sang happy birthday. Then my daughter handed me a wrapped box with a big smile. "Open it," she said. We picked it out together. I unwrapped the paper and opened the box. Inside was a cheap plastic trophy, gold-colored paint already chipping. The base had a little plaque that said world's #1 disappointment. The whole table burst out laughing. My wife, my daughter who was 22, my son who was 19, all laughing like it was the funniest thing they had ever seen. "Your face," my son said between laughs. "It's perfect." My wife wiped tears from her eyes. We saw it at one of those joke shops and couldn't resist. I looked at this trophy in my hands. I looked at my family doubled over with laughter, and something inside me went very quiet. I smiled. "Thank you," I said calmly. "This is very thoughtful." They kept laughing for another minute. Then we had cake. Then they went back to their phones and their conversations that didn't include me. I sat at the head of the table holding my trophy and thinking about the last 23 years. I thought about working 2 jobs so my wife could stay home with the kids when they were young. I thought about missing my own father's funeral because we couldn't afford for me to take time off work. I thought about every vacation I didn't take, every hobby I gave up, every dream I put aside so they could have more, and they thought I was a disappointment. That night I couldn't sleep. I went to my home office and started looking at our finances. The house was in both our names, but I had paid the mortgage for over 20 years. The cars were in my name. The savings account had about $40,000. My retirement account had another $200,000. My wife had never worked. My daughter worked part-time at a clothing store and spent more than she earned. My son was in college on loans that I had. My family gave me a trophy that said world's #1 disappointment. I left them with nothing. Co-signed. I sat with those numbers for a long time. The next morning I acted normal. I went to work. I came home. I had dinner with my family. They were on their phones the whole time. Nobody mentioned the trophy. It was just another day to them. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly rearranged everything. I moved the savings into a new account in just my name. I talked to a lawyer about protecting my retirement. I contacted the loan company about my son's student loans and what would happen if I was no longer the co-signer. I made copies of every important document and put them in a safety deposit box my wife didn't know about. On a Tuesday morning, I packed 2 suitcases and put them in my car. I left a note on the kitchen table. It said I was leaving. It said I wanted a divorce. It said my lawyer would be in contact. I drove to a hotel and checked in for a week. The call started around noon when my wife got home from her hair appointment. I didn't answer. She called 43 times that first day. My daughter called 27 times. My son called 3 times, which felt about right for him. The voicemails were interesting. First confused, then angry, then panicked. The panicked ones came when they realized the savings account was empty. My wife was crying. "Where's the money? What did you do with our money?" I texted her one message. "Check the trophy." She didn't understand what I meant at first. Then she found the note I had tucked inside. It explained everything. Every sacrifice I had made. Every dream I had given up. Every time I had felt invisible in my own home. And at the end, it said, "This is what happens when you hand someone a trophy for being a disappointment. They decide to stop disappointing themselves." The divorce took 8 months. My wife fought for everything, but my lawyer was better than hers. The house had to be sold. She got half of the proceeds, but that wasn't much after the mortgage was paid off. My retirement was protected. The savings I had moved were deemed separate property because I had documented how I was the only one who ever contributed to it. My son had to find a new co-signer for his loans. He couldn't. He dropped out of college. My daughter had to get a full-time job for the first time in her life. She calls me sometimes now. She apologized once, said she didn't realize how much the trophy thing would hurt. I told her it wasn't just the trophy. It was 23 years of being treated like my only value was what I could provide. She didn't have much to say to that. My wife remarried last year. Some guy she met online. My son is working at a warehouse. My daughter is still at the clothing store, but she's a manager now. I live in a small apartment that I love. I date occasionally. I travel when I want. I took up woodworking like I always wanted to, but never had time for. Last week I was cleaning out some old boxes and I found the trophy. World's #1 disappointment. I thought about throwing it away. Instead, I put it on my bookshelf. It reminds me of who I used to be. Someone who accepted being treated badly because I thought that was what family meant. I don't accept that anymore.